Welcome to the Clean Library Podcast, where content meets conscience. We believe there are millions of you readers out there desperately searching for a better way to find clean content. Each episode, we will introduce you to a new author of clean books, giving you, your family, and your friends clean options.
Hello, my name is Marcus Williams. Welcome to the Clean Library Podcast. Today we have TM Goodkey with us today, and we're super excited for our conversation with her. Tiffany lives in the province of Ontario, Canada. She is beyond happily married to her husband and has two beautiful children. She has no pets, but her backyard chickens count as pets, or at least that's what her children say. Tiffany is an avid reader of all things magical, fantasy, paranormal, and with a side of romance. You have her perfect cocktail to read and hibernate with. She has just started her writing journey and wants to write clean fantasy romance with funny characters, grand gestures, heart-stopping moments, and everything in between. All right. Well, thank you, Tiffany, for being with us, and welcome.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. You are our first international author.
That makes me sound really special. I don't know if that's the case.
So before we jump into it, we're going to read your two truths and a lie. And today Brock couldn't be with us, so this is my opportunity to actually catch up because he is in the lead guessing. So number one, I have learned 3 languages. Number 2, I'm really good at gardening. And number 3, I think about stories while I'm driving. So languages, gardening, and think about stories while you're driving. All right, so while we're talking, I'm going to try to figure out which one would be the lie. So I may throw some questions in there to trip you up. Maybe I shouldn't have warned you of that.
You probably shouldn't. Now I'm going to be trying to actively deceive you, which is probably not good. So.
That's all right. It allows us to get to know more about you, which is what, the whole point of this is, to get our listeners to know, not just talk about clean books but get to know authors of clean books and really kind of build a personal relationship with the different authors. And because at least for me, there are certain authors that I love and I read all their books, and, as soon as a new one comes out, I want to read it. And I think, the more I can connect with that author personally, the more I like their books. So that's our goal. That's what we're trying to do here. So as we get started, tell us about how you started this journey of deciding, hey, I want to be an author.
Well, that's I did not plan on becoming an indie author, which it just kind of took me a little bit by surprise. I actually was, my husband and I moved to this smaller town a couple years back, and I had actually been struggling pretty severely with depression and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I was diagnosed. We had gone through a bunch of stuff, but that's a whole other situation. And so I was kind of working through this, and for about 3 years, I was kind of struggling through it. And I had 2 young kids, and I was getting to a point where I needed to do something, because recovering from depression can be an interesting disease.
Yeah.
Because you can either get really sucked into this boredom-y sort of life where you're trying to recover and get better, and you still don't have the ambition to do anything. So I actually started looking up ghostwriting, which I don't know if you know much about ghostwriting or not, but it's where you write for other people. They pay you a sum of money. In my case, a really little tiny bit of money, because I was not experienced. And I really enjoyed it. I had done some creative writing when I was in high school, but I never in a million years thought I could actually pull off writing a book. So I ended up getting a contract last October to write a series in a paranormal romance. And I was beyond floored. But with that, I sort of started realizing some of the problems I was going to have, because I am a Christian and I have some more conservative values, and there was just some stuff I really wasn't quite okay with writing. And I reached out to the publisher and told them that I wasn't capable of writing some of the scenes that they wanted me to write. So they were like, no problem, write the book, leave out that stuff. So I was like, okay. So I got into the ghostwriting and did that. I've written 3 books as a ghostwriter. And I had decided that, you know what, I am spending so much of my time writing for these other people, and not books that I would really love myself.
Right.
Um, why not put that into my own writing? And because the market or the genre that I like to write in is really saturated with explicit content, it'd be really cool if there were more content that was in the fantasy romance or even the paranormal romance that was clean.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, not everybody wants to sit down and read the explicit stuff,
Right.
and I'm one of those people, but I really love fantasy romance and I really love paranormal romance, and you have a really difficult time finding authors who yeah, don't write all the explicit content. So that's kind of what
Yeah.
stumbled me into this.
That's an interesting journey. Now I've heard of ghostwriting, especially in like memoirs and nonfiction type, but how does it work in fiction? How did the creative process, how does that work of them, you writing what they want you to write? And how does that, like, I
Yeah,
don't
it's
understand that.
well, it's interesting. It depends on who you work with. I worked on a platform where you apply for different contracts. So they give you kind of a description of what they're expecting. In this particular contract that I took, they said they wanted a paranormal romance. They had a couple of tropes that they wanted hit. And they say, send over a sample of your work. So then you do that. And then if they agree to work with you, the the publisher or the person I worked with, who I don't know who they are. I've got no idea who they are. I know they're from the UK. That's about all I know. I don't know anything
Yeah.
beyond that. And they tell me about the premise of the story that they want. They give me a little blurb, and then from that blurb, I come up with an entire outline for a book. I send the outline back to them, and then they tell me, oh, we like this, this, and this. I don't like this. Can you change this? Can you add in this trope? I think the first book I wrote for them, I wrote 18 different tropes in one book. It was a lot. It was
Wow.
way
That's a
too
lot.
many. It was way too many tropes. And from that, because they liked my writing, they put me on to the second series, and I pretty much crafted the world. And so the second book, sorry, is pretty much my own creation. They gave me kind of like the premise at the beginning, but I created the whole series
Hmm.
basically for them. And then they paid me the money, and I sent them the manuscript, and I don't know what happened to it.
Hmm. So is this an individual that essentially had an idea for a story, but just didn't have the I guess confidence or ability to write it, or is this a company that wanted to put out books?
So this is a whole other topic. If like it's a whole other thing, but
Yeah.
right now within the ghostwriting community, there's a huge, huge market for romance, because people who read romances read really quickly. They consume books really quickly. So
Yeah.
these publishers and individuals have figured out that if they can do these 60,000 word books and pump them out really quick, like every month or even every couple of weeks, they can actually make a decent living at it, even if the writing isn't that great. So that's kind of what is happening, is that these smaller, it was a publishing company who hired me. I had to sign a contract. They're a legitimate organization. I looked
Right.
them up. But there are some who are just individuals who want to take the manuscript and claim it as their own. I know a lot of places that, or a lot of companies are having just like a bunch of different pen names for different series, and they hire different ghostwriters to fill out those series. So that, at least that's what my experience has been with the ghostwriting. And so I haven't done anything since probably January was the last book I finished for them. And I've been dedicating all of my time to putting out my new novel and working on the second one and so on
Yeah.
and so forth. So,
It kind of sounds like the old dime novel
oh,
concept where we just where they would just kind of throw out these novels, charge a dime for them, and yeah, just pump them out, just
yeah.
content. That's interesting. And so now that you're working on your own book, what did you learn ghostwriting that has helped you with your own work?
Well, I think the biggest thing I learned was that I could do it. Um,
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think I think a lot of people can write, and we're nervous and afraid of one, the rejection. Once you put your work out there, it's a really vulnerable thing. Putting
Yeah.
your words onto paper and sending it out to the world, and hoping somebody's going to like it, and hoping that it, like 50% of them is not going to absolutely destroy you in the comment section. That was pretty a big boost for me to be like, oh, I can actually write a book.
Hmm.
And then I realized I can actually write really quickly. So I can do a 60K book in about a month, which apparently is fast, which I didn't realize at the time. I have like ADHD brain. So like once I get hyper focused, I can just go.
Yeah.
So sometimes, it takes a little while to get myself into the habit of getting started. But yeah, once I'm in there, I can really focus. And so yeah, that taught me that I could do it. I also learned just how to develop my characters better, because the publisher I was working for gave me like a report essentially of the things that I did really well, things that I could work on. And I figured, why not take the opportunity to learn from people who are obviously in the industry and I wasn't. So I kept asking for like advice and feedback, and tried to like work on my writing. I realize it's not perfect, and if anybody actually does pick up my book, thanks. But I realize there's gonna be mistakes, and I'm gonna keep growing, and I'm probably gonna keep growing with every book that I put out. But yeah, that was probably the biggest thing I learned from doing that.
And like for me, I I look back at my first book and the most recent book, and I can see and that I've evolved and gotten better. And there's a part of me that wants to go back and rewrite the first one because of the things that I've learned. And it's interesting that you were able to go through that learning process, but not under your own name. So the book that's under your own name is the one that's after you went through some of that learning process, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, part of me wishes I knew where the book is, just so I could see the difference between what I started with and where I'm at now. Again, I realize how very new I am to the whole game, and I am
Yeah.
learning a ton. Uh, so, but it would be really kind of cool to see, that's interesting. You're right. I should have thought about that, or I should have expanded on that and put more world building into it. But I also realized that the books that I did write were filling this quick cash market. So I don't know how many people who love reading are going to read that book, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Uh-huh.
Who knows?
Yeah. So what's the name of your first personal book under your actual?
My first personal book, it's called A Spy's Fateful Bond.
Okay. Tell
Yep.
us a little bit about it.
So it is based in its own world. It is about a human woman who has been forced into becoming a spy on the human kingdom because her father was abducted, and the is being used against her to get information for the people who have abducted her father. In the process of spying on the lady in the house that she's currently working in, they end up going to the Fae Court, which is a pretty I don't know if you know anything about fantasy, but fairies and fae, that's really huge right now in the
Yeah.
romance
Hmm.
genre. So they go to the Fae Court, and she finds out that she is essentially a fated mate to the king of the court. So, and then the first book is about their story of rescuing her father and the king helping with this. And it's full of funny little side characters because I really enjoy humor, and full of grouchy people because it's funny to watch them grow and develop. And so,
Right. So are you a outline your whole book for person, or are you I have an idea and I just start writing person?
so, so the term, what is it? Pantser? Is that what the term
Yeah,
is?
right. I've heard that.
So, I think previous to the publishing or the ghostwriting, I would have said I was a bit of a pantser. Just go for it, see what
Hmm.
happens. But I saw value in outlining it. I don't always go by the outline. I think it just helps me follow kind of like the main flow of the story. And now my story writing has kind of turned into a bit of a me and my husband situation. which is really fun because he is not at all a romance reader.
Yeah.
He doesn't even read all that much for fun. He's a bit of a techie. He likes to, research and do things like 3D printing. Like, he's not at all into romance writing, but he wants me to make sure that my stories have been thought through and don't have these weird gaping holes, which I really appreciate because sometimes I
Hmm.
miss them.
Yeah.
So he actually sits down with me and we come up with these huge intricate stories of things that I never would have thought of, uh, because he's like, oh, it'd be really good if you included this to make that make more sense, or oh, that would be really good foreshadowing for this. And I would just go, because that's just kind of how my brain works, just go see what happens, see what the
Uh-huh.
characters tell me. And so that's been kind of a fun little thing that my stories have turned into this family affair. Even my kids are involved, which is really funny.
Oh, that's great. And um, as you have, well, the fact that you've made the decision to keep your books clean allows you to do that with your kids, right? You don't have to lock your manuscript in another room and that's
Yep.
mommy's room. We don't go into her writing room type thing, you know?
Yeah.
Um, do you, with the popularity of the genre and like you said, just the number of books and the explicit content in a lot of those books, um, how do you stand out as someone writing that genre and those tropes in a clean way?
Well, it's actually a difficult question because I'm currently working through trying to figure out how to market my
Hmm.
books. I found a lot of great groups on Facebook and even Instagram, and trying to kind of go into the clean groups. But if you don't know much about the genre, like the romance genre, there's definitely, even within the clean groups, really, really segregated ideas of what is clean and what isn't.
Yeah.
And because there's no standard of like, okay, this is what we consider clean, mildly clean, to uh, yeah, and it's massively different based on who you talk to. So I've actually found it challenging to to market my book in a way where I'm telling people it's clean, because if you don't, you will get people who will bash your book for not being explicit enough. So you have to make sure you tell them, okay, this is a clean romance, but
Right.
then you also have to tell people this is a fantasy romance where there's like, you know, murder and political intrigue, and this isn't your like small town romance where everything is lovey-dovey and happy. Like,
Right.
there's a lot of stuff going on in this fantasy world with random fantasy characters, and some of them are more aggressive than others. Like, in my debut novel, I have orcs in mine, and if you know anything about, you know, orcs, or even Dungeons and Dragons, or anything like that, orcs are really aggressive as a character. So yeah, it's really interesting. I've been lucky enough to find some really amazing authors who are kind of just breaking into this clean fantasy, and we're actually working on this really huge shared world, which is really exciting.
Well, that's
It's
cool.
actually going to be 33 books with 11 authors, and it's all clean fantasy romance, and it's a shared political intrigue storyline, but each author has their own couple, essentially, that goes through a 3-book series. So I think there's going to be a bit of a wave, hopefully. I'm really hoping that
Yeah.
there's going to be a bit of a wave to introduce people to this fantasy romance with the clean aspect, because you can still have romance without having that explicit type of content. And I do want to be able to let my daughter read my books and it be, okay, or my
Right.
son, if he wants to read it. Like, I don't really want to be embarrassed or ashamed of my books either. Not to say that, people who write explicit content are like, that's not the case at all. But I would like the option as a reader. I would like the option to read something that's clean. So
Yeah.
it's been challenging to try and figure out how to market it, because there's really, really kind of squeaky clean, contemporary, and then there's like fantasy, and then you
Yeah.
throw in romance. So it's challenging. It's challenging.
Yeah. I'm not, I never got into Dungeons and Dragons because I grew up in the 80s when it was considered like that was bad,
Oh,
like
okay.
only the bad kids. That's why I love that the Stranger Things when they went into that, because that was totally true to what the 80s were like. But anyway, so in this, that's really cool that you're doing this huge world with all these authors. So do you have, like, I don't know what you'd call them, the game master? Is there someone who controls the world and makes sure that everyone is staying within the bounds and the lines of this world? Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah, the mastermind behind this, her name is Harper Lynn. She's just kind of starting this pen name, and she came up with the entire world, all the political systems, the weather. She has documented and outlined it all in these huge files that we all kind of have to stick within. But it's been a lot of fun to creatively work with so many other authors within this genre. But yeah, no, she's definitely the head. She's the one that has like the largest understanding of how the political intrigue is supposed to go through each
Mhm.
book, because it is one political intrigue storyline that goes through every single book, but each author has the liberty to kind of create whoever they want from the kingdom that they're assigned to. And so like
Wow.
my kingdom is the plant kingdom, and so my character will have powers over plants and stuff like that. So but each person has their own kingdom, and they can shape it and make it what they want. They just need to kind of follow with what's currently happening in the world. They have to keep that interwoven, which is a huge undertaking.
Wow, yeah, that is. So is she going to approve every book before they're released to make sure they fit?
Yeah, so she'll read through every book that goes through, and like she probably won't touch how people are writing or anything. She just
Right,
wants to make
right.
sure that the main point that what that book needed to have was in there enough so we could keep the story going. So this is about a 2.5 year project, and we'll be releasing books in May almost every single month for the next 2.5 years.
So is there an overarching name? Like, you've got the name of the world and then your book title, or so how would people find them?
Yeah, so that we're currently calling it EE. No, it's the elemental enchanted. Oh shoot, you know what? I'm gonna have to look it up because now I'm completely blanking. I had not even planned to even bring this up. Isn't that funny? Oh my stars.
That's all right. It'll come to you like when we're talking about something totally different and you just shout it out.
Yeah, probably.
That's how my that's how it works for me. That's fascinating. That I think that'll be so cool. It's almost like you're building in your own professional fan fiction world. Like, so many people write fan fiction around worlds that they love, and you're just creating this massive universe almost. That's super cool. I hope the project goes well and that it becomes successful, because it's really intriguing. That's really cool.
We're
Um,
really excited about
yeah,
it.
I'll bet. So, as you were planning your book and outlining your book, did you have certain tropes that you wanted to add into it? Did you have ideas of where you wanted to go with it before you started, or was it that process of talking with your husband and your kids and everything that really created the story?
I think, well, I had an idea at first, just kind of some thoughts that I was kind of piecing together. And I was sitting in the park with my kids, and my daughter had just kind of she was done with playing on the play structure, which was totally fine. And we were just sitting, and I was just like, I need to talk about this out loud because I'm a verbal processor. So I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about it out loud. And she's like interjecting her thoughts about what would be really interesting if you put this in. And she's 8, by the way. And so she's like, oh, it'd be fun if you did this, or it'd be really fun if you did this. And so a couple of things that I started realizing when I wanted to start writing was a couple of things I wanted to make sure I wanted to portray
Mm-hmm.
within my stories was I didn't want incompetent men.
Thank
um,
you.
I I was raised by a really strong man, and he was a good man. He took care of us like really really well, and just an absolutely wonderful man. I had really great male influences in my life, and my husband is an absolutely wonderful man. And I was really kind of sick of reading about either the really dumb man
Mm-hmm.
or uh, maybe just too much. I don't know how, like, too aggressive, I guess. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Uh-huh.
I wanted somebody who was real. I wanted to portray a real person. Like I would portray the female character, a real person. Um, I wanted to make sure that the male character was also real. So with this one, my male main character is kind of going to be going through controlling some of his anger issues, which is a thing. And so
Yeah.
I wanted it to be a realistic thing that wasn't glorified, and work through those sorts of things. Just like I want to work through like my female characters trust issues, and I wanted the characters to feel like you could see realistic aspects of people's lives. I know
Yeah.
you're supposed like you can read books and just get lost in the world and not worry too much about that sort of thing, but I think for me in the romance genre, I really just wanted to make sure that there was accurate portrayals of men who weren't, necessarily the perfect specimen or not. Like I wanted
Right.
realistic people in my
Yeah.
books. So that was yeah. Anyways, yeah.
That's funny because I tend to, I mean, I appreciate that because I think especially in that genre, you get a very caricature of men a lot. Um, but I find when I'm writing that I tend to write very strong female characters. And I don't know that it's on purpose or what, but I've got an amazing wife and three strong daughters. And that's how I tend to write my female characters. So um, it's interesting that you say that.
Which I'm not gonna knock the strong female characters because I'm definitely a strong woman
Hmm.
with opinions. God love my husband who's super patient and will work with me on some of my thoughts. But yeah, I just wish there was a bit of more of a balance. I think sometimes in most things like movies, whatever, there's going to be a pendulum that kind of flows and goes back and
Right.
forth. And I don't want to overcorrect something that needs to be overcorrected. I just want realistic people in my books. And I wanted to portray a range of people. Like I've read
Yeah.
a lot of female characters who are really outgoing and extroverted and um, how is it what is the term? I'm trying to think of the term that's commonly used. Fierce heroine, I think, is one of the terms.
Okay.
Um, Sassy
Yeah.
and what have you. But I actually have a lot of friends who are quite introverted, quite one like absolutely wonderful women who are just quieter. They don't need to make a big stink or fuss. And I haven't read a lot of women who are like that. And I would say that they're extremely strong women,
Yeah.
but they just don't show it in the same way as like if I walked into a room and I'm a bit of a loud individual.
Hmm.
I make a bit of a splash when I walk into a room, and so people are like, "Oh, okay, so she's very extroverted." But I've had introverted friends who are just absolutely inspirational to me. Anyways, they are more thoughtful sometimes than I am because I tend to live by the seat of my pants and I just kind of do things.
Yeah.
They are loyal and kind and just not maybe not what's super grabby when you're wanting to read a book, I guess, but I want to write them all.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And with my strong female characters, that's not to say that my male characters aren't, because they are as well. But I think it's important to be real and to talk about their struggles and trials and the different things that they go through, but also show that the strength of possibility and working together and building a strong relationship, and that you can accomplish things together. Because you know, I think you want to be real, but at the same time, you want to show, almost not model is not the right word, but kind of be an example, I guess, of someone who reads your book who can then use that type of relationship to maybe
Yeah.
help themselves, type thing,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. So, are you involved at all in like the Bookstagram or Book Talk and those communities? Do you get involved in that?
Other than some of the ARC readers or the advanced reader copy
Yeah.
individuals, so I don't know your audience and whether or not they know anything about that, but I have a few bookstagrammers who have agreed to read my book, and they have done a review on my book, which has been really, really kind. Other than that, no, not really. I literally just got Instagram like a month and a half ago because a friend of
Hmm.
mine was like, if you're gonna publish a book, you probably should do this. I was like, sure. I'm a 35-year-old woman who doesn't know how to use Instagram. So that was a really fun learning curve.
Yeah.
um, I mean, I was born in '89, and I was Facebook for most like my high school years. So,
Yeah.
and I was off that for quite a while too. So there was a lot of technology I had to relearn, and I'm still not sure what I'm doing and if I'm doing it right. But the bookstagrammers and book talk and stuff like that, I don't have like a really big understanding of even how it works. I have
Hmm.
tried to utilize different groups to help get my book out there, but I honestly just hope for the best when I put up a reel and hope I didn't screw it up, which I have a
Yeah.
couple times. I've had to take them down where it's like just a blank screen. I'm like, I swear I put a picture there and I did not put a picture. Anyways, so poor people who were on the account like early on, which were mostly my friends, to be
Right.
truly
Right.
honest. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, we're just gonna learn together because I don't know. And I figure I'd be honest with the people who have signed up for my newsletter and stuff. I'm like, look, this is kind of who I am. I don't know what to send you in my newsletter, so what do you want to read? Because
Yeah.
I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to inundate you with just garbage. So you want to hear about my book? Cool, I'll talk about that. Otherwise, I don't really want to bug you in your life, and which is not the best marketing technique.
I
I'm aware of
know.
that.
How do you find people to even subscribe to your newsletter? What is your strategy?
So I took a page out of one of the people in this world who's she writes on the other side of romance. She
Hmm.
does both. She's got two pen names. And so she actually has put out like hundreds of books. And so she was telling me about when I get ARC readers to have them fill out a form, and on the form have them choose to either sign up as a permanent ARC reader or your newsletter or both. And I gained 67 people for my newsletter just on that alone. So that was really cool. Uh, the other thing she had told me was doing little takeovers in Facebook groups. So I have one of those coming up in a couple weeks. So we'll see how that goes. But that's what I've done thus far. And I know 67 people is not a lot of people, but I mean, it's something. I've
It's
never
something,
published
yeah, for
anything.
sure.
So
And your ARC readers, are you just posting in groups asking for ARC readers, or how do you
yep.
even find those? Okay.
Yeah, there's some really huge Facebook groups. The biggest one that that I've joined and I got most of my ARC readers from is something called Book Talk Baddies.
Okay.
So they read everything. Like nothing is off limits in these groups. But I kind of think that's where some of my readers are, because some of them I've seen posts come up and people are like, I'm really over reading romance with explicit content. Does anybody have a recommendation for a romance or a fantasy romance with no explicit content but really good plot? And so then there's like hundreds of recommendations that come underneath those comments from readers. And so though it's mostly inundated with authors or books that have explicit content, it's means that I also have like a bit of a niche when I post like, hey, this is clean. I'm looking for ARC readers. And I make sure to advertise that I'm clean so that
Yeah.
gets surprised when they open up my book and expect something to happen within 20 pages. It's not going to happen. So,
And you mentioned earlier the variety or the spectrum of definitions of clean. So for you, when you say your books are clean, um, what do you mean?
I what I take mine as is passionate but clean. So I don't shy away from like say a kissing scene,
Hmm.
whereas somebody who would categorize their book as squeaky clean would probably not do that. My characters would be okay with holding hands. where a squeaky clean writer would not be okay with that. Or yeah, it's so vast. There's this wonderful woman. Her name is Rachel Luke Parker. She's created a book called Closed Door Romance, and it's probably been the greatest thing for so many of us romance authors, because she's created a bit of a standard. 3 levels. Level 1, you're kind of squeaky clean, not much is going on there. Then you've got your level 2, where there's like, your kissing scene, or like holding hands, or we're a little bit more touchy feely, but nothing like in any areas. And then there's a
Hmm.
level 3 where there's more description, and then it's quite a bit of big list, but it all goes closed door. It's all fade to black, but at least there's something within the clean genre that you can
Yeah.
fall under. And so I fall in the level 2 category,
Okay.
because I want to write to adults. I don't want to
Right.
write to young adults, mostly because like I'm not kicking young adult writing or books. I think that's absolutely fantastic, but I'm trying to fill a hole for myself as a 35-year-old woman.
Yeah.
So I don't really want to sit down and read about teenagers who have pent up energy, and like I I want to read about semi-established characters who have experienced stuff in their life and have worked through stuff in their life. Like that's the type of stuff I want to read. And I'm
Right.
actually seeing a lot in some of the groups, women like who are 40, 50, who are like, can you, somebody please write a book about a woman who's 40 or 50 years old, finding love again and whatever. And I'm like, there is a market for it.
Yeah.
And these women, typically, a lot of them are asking for clean stuff. And like, there is a market for it. It may not be huge, but you know what? I'm not hoping to become the next Brandon Sanders or
Right.
like Sarah J. Maas. Like that's not my thing. I just want to be able to share some nice stories that people are going to enjoy. And that's about it. I'm really actually not even expecting to make any money on it. I just enjoy
Right.
doing it.
And there's just, it seems like there's so many little code words that someone just jumping into it would be just lost. Like, what are all these little code words mean? What am I looking at? What are you talking about? Um, I'm glad there's at least someone is trying to put it in categories and helping define what that means. Because otherwise, it's just, how do you even start? If you're a new reader, how do you start understanding what you're looking for?
Yeah, no, it's really true. And you can like I walked into a couple books like when I started reading again, because I used to read a lot when I was in high school, and as I mentioned before, when I was struggling through depression, um, when I was trying to kind of escape from my own personal terror, which was
Hmm.
my own head, I sought out different forms of entertainment to just try to get out of it. So I was raised in the 90s, so I play video games, and I got into reading again. And so it was really fun to stumble onto some of these really awesome stories. But then I stumbled onto some where I was like, oh crap, that really snuck up on me and did not see that coming. And then, I have to DNF some books because I didn't know. So it would be really cool if I knew where, or people knew where to go to get some of these books. So
Yeah.
Rachel has done a really great job. She's got a website you can even go to. Luckily, there has been some platforms that are kind of cross, I don't know, levels, where they
Hmm.
you can like specifically search for different things that you want. Say you want clean or wholesome. There's something called romance.io. You can go there and look for books for book recommendations. And you can be like super specific. Like say you want like a military, ex-military romance clean, and they'll like come up with it for you. It does it all. And so some of them are really good, but yeah, the market is just really inundated and saturated with the other content, and
Right.
they're louder, and us clean people just need to be louder too. We just need to be just as loud
Right.
so that we can get our stuff out there. But I think we're kind of a little bit nervous about what kind of um, pressure we might get from other people. Like I have an author friend who I was talking to this morning. She's like, yeah, I just got a 1-star review. Somebody blasted me for not having any explicit content, and like it was I read the review. It was long. It was really, really long. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. And she's like, I have it right in the trigger warnings. Like, this is clean. Like, I don't write explicit content. And people just kind of jump over that, and that's what they expect. And so, yeah, it's definitely
Yeah.
wishing there was a better place or a better way to do it, for sure.
And that, what a topsy-turvy world where the complaint is it was too clean.
And she writes some gory stuff, like stuff I have a hard time swallowing. So
Wow.
I'm just like, whoa, that was the complaint. I'm like, okay, sure,
Interesting.
I guess. I don't know.
Well, I think you're right that I don't know if it's just personality wise or what it is that um, the people who want the clean content aren't as loud or demanding. And that's difficult because the market tends to go where the loudest, most demanding people are. So I think that is important that that's one of the purposes of the podcast, right? Is to start having these conversations and to put it out there. So um, that's something we need to work on. But I also want to go back to, we're about out of time, but I want to mention to anyone listening, when you talked about ARC readers or advanced reader copies, if you're a reader out there and you want to read books and you're willing to write reviews, you can get these books for free. You can get an advanced copy for free from the authors, and you're helping them out by getting a free book and leaving a review. So it's a great option for those of you who like to read a lot, but don't have the money to spend on it or want to be more involved, get to know the authors better. So look for those opportunities, readers, if you didn't know those exist. So we'll make sure people know that. So we need to
Sorry,
get.
I did remember the
Go
new
ahead.
title, by the way.
Oh, awesome. See, I told you it would come.
It's in Enchanted Elemental Empires.
Enchanted
Is the
Elemental
world.
Empire.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, look forward to seeing books in that world. That really cool idea. Well, we need to go into your two truths and a lie and see if I can figure it out. I didn't. We were so involved in our conversation that I forgot to try to trip you up. So I'm going to have to think through these here. I think about stories while I'm driving. Well, if you're anything like me, you think about stories everywhere. So I'm going to say that's true. I've learned 3 languages. You're in Canada, so you had to learn English and French at least. So, or at least you had to take classes.
Yeah. That sounds more accurate.
So, is there a third? And really good at gardening. I'm going to say, because whenever we see specific numbers, that tends to be a lie. So I'm going to say the 3 languages is the lie.
That's actually the truth.
Ah, so which one is the lie?
And I can't garden worth a darn. I try so hard. I'm really enthusiastic.
Okay.
I really, really am. I've had one plant that's lasted like almost 2 years now. I'm really proud of myself. I
That's
have
pretty
not
good.
killed it. I've forgotten to water it several times, but my husband has rescued it. So, no, I'm absolutely terrible at it. I really want to be better. But no, I'm bad at it.
Let's see. Up where you are, it's probably easy to grow like raspberries, blackberries, rhubarb, that kind of stuff likes colder weather. Yeah.
No,
All right.
no.
Well, dang it. I had this opportunity to catch up with Brock and I blew it.
Sorry.
Oh, boy. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was a great conversation. I really appreciated your time and everything that we talked about. For all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe, share with your friends, spread the word. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much for listening to the Clean Library Podcast.